The bespectacled, the one, the only, was going to hang out with him last night. He flaked on me. That's fine. No problem. He was at the game. We'll tell that story a little bit later. From the Athletics, Sam Amick. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Dave. Where are we coming to the audience from this morning?
We're in the backyard. It's a long story, and it's not worth your. Well, it is. I mean, maybe it's worth your time. It's not worth the audience's time, your time, or my time. So I'm at home, surrounded by dogs and other things. As you're in your office. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm surrounded by dog singular, but I'm good. Had a back-to-back Warriors, Mavs, and Kings Suns last night, so we're feeling a little haggard this morning. But hey,
there's dog one.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to throw a hot take at you, and I want you to talk me out of it. And I, as always, as I've learned with this show, I'm in constant flinch mode from the audience because they'll yell at me. The following take is simply just a question. It is for a thought exercise. Please do not read into any things I'm saying as my opinion or the opinion of KHTK or our parent company, Bonneville. So all year, to be fair, I have speculated, including to you, that though DeMar DeRozan is putting up phenomenal numbers, and I love him, and if Melissa and I have a third child, we may name it DeMar, that it might be doing something interesting to the offense, a your turn, my turn type of thing between him and De'Aaron. And to the point of last night, the 3-point shooting was completely off. There were fits and starts on the bench. DeMar went down with a back situation, as I understand it, yesterday. First half, I think the Kings were up 5 or 6 at the half. And they blew Phoenix out of the water, and it was by far the best their offense has looked all season long. Is that a coincidence in your opinion?
I'm feverishly typing to try to add data to this conversation because I have a general sense of what you're talking about. But like the first thought I have is just to be, bless you, and
thank you.
In fact check mode. If I am not mistaken, even before last night, I believe they were a top 5 offense.
Yes. Well, depending on the metric, but no, their offense was not like bottom third to bolster your point.
Yeah, I mean, and so, in fact, I had heard our friend Katie Christensen the other night on the telecast highlighting the fact that, they were absolutely killing when it comes to 2-point range, and that, if they could get the 3-ball going, then it would be lights out. The general idea that you're talking about is obviously not very controversial. I mean, yeah, DeMar is an ISO player. A lot of times he's a very good playmaker, but finding that chemistry with De'Aaron, with Sabonis, and that was the whole thing. Is you got 3 guys in that trio who can move the ball and who can facilitate and who really can be the hub of the offense, but that might be too many riches on that front. And if that makes sense, you got to at least figure it out. So I hear you. I mean, I was at the game last night. I didn't break it down with a scout's eye as I was chatting with people on press row, but it felt like shots fell as opposed to, it being a product of the functionality of the offense. That's just how the league goes sometimes, but it's worth monitoring. I mean, DeMar has played really, really well. And, my thought going into that game was actually, I guess, kind of maybe the opposite of yours in terms of with Malik Monk being out, DeMar just creates the kind of cushion that they couldn't handle. They didn't have last year, and they couldn't handle it when they lost Malik. That was really the story of the back end of their season. So, you and I are kind of telling 2 different stories. It's a small sample size. We're 12 games in, and kind of we'll see how it looks from here.
And Sam, I know you get the point. I just want to belabor it a little bit. It's certainly not, hey, DeMar DeRozan is a secret offense killer. To what you said earlier, the offense is actually numerically, for the most part, been fine. It's been the 3-point shots. It's been the bench. It's been the front court depth or lack thereof. You lose Malik Monk, which is basically right now your bench. And it felt like it felt like something, and we'll see if it's sustainable or not, but it felt like something like the lid came off last night. Like the proverbial lid came off the hoop. And DeMar is a phenomenal player. He's playing at an all-star caliber level right now through 11 plus games, 12 games. My bigger concern is not, I guess, hey, does DeMar DeRozan, is he a bad player and will he not fit in? It's more of anywhere he's been, San Antonio, Toronto, and here, he is not a James Harden type magnet, don't get me wrong, but he is definitely a ball magnet, and he takes a lot of gravity with him. I just wonder if there is a more than 10 game adjustment point for this Kings offense and the way they're running it to get used to factoring him into that at the highest level.
No, I agree. I mean, I will kind of add, I guess, with context, he is not the same guy that he was in Toronto.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of his basketball story is how when he got traded to San Antonio, rather than kind of letting his chin hit the floor and just, showing up to work and clocking in and clocking out, he let Greg Popovich help him grow and became a significantly better playmaker during that time. And it happened mostly off of the national spotlight because nobody was paying attention to those Spurs teams. And then in Chicago, that skill set came with him. So he's got the versatility and the willingness to I think, be part of an elite offense. To make sure we are speaking factually, I did pull those numbers up in terms of offensive rating, which is the truest sense of actual offense. They were actually 12th in the league heading into last night's game, and then last night's game bumped them up to 8th. So that is not, I mean, whether it's DeMar or a list of 72 different factors, that offense, those types of numbers are not going to lead them to their goals this season. Right. They're just not. This team is going to be offense first, and 12th is simply not good enough.
Sam Amick of The Athletic joining us. You mentioned something to monitor earlier when talking about DeMar. I want to monitor, and I don't have the numbers as of last night, but I know going into last night, not an anomaly, I don't think, Sam. The top 4 minute getters in the NBA, as my dog is barking angrily at it, the top 4 minute getters are DeMar DeRozan, in no particular order: DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, and Keegan Murray. That, I think we can both agree, is not sustainable over an 82-game stretch, and they just lost Malik Monk, who takes the bulk of those bench minutes from everybody else. In your opinion, when you look at this team, I'll take you back to Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox and the imbalance we've always talked about. Are we in that imbalance mode right now where Monty McNair is going to eventually have to do something to balance this thing out and bolster the bench, or at least the front court depth?
Yeah, I think for sure. I don't know exactly where they're looking. Obviously, size had been, an issue and something that we've talked about in the past that they'd be on the lookout for. But yeah, the depth is a problem. And again, it's like you have depth in that Malik Monk type area that you didn't have before with DeMar being on board. But they are just way too thin in the second unit. I wonder, and we're still early in terms of trade season and real intel coming our way. But, I do wonder what they're going to do, because it's funny. I was just watching the Netflix Starting Five show this morning. I was kind of chipping away at it. And, Sabonis has got a lot of good behind the scenes insight in that show that kind of reminds you that, like, this is a 3-year journey for this team where, the footage I just watched this morning was when they lost to the Pelicans in the play-in game. And it just really kind of underscored, like, he had a line about how it's cliche, but true, where he says, I believe that you have to have struggle, before you kind of grow and get through it and rise. And so, like, this is, we've said it all along. This is a really, really important season for this team. And whether it's improving the roster in the kind of way that gets them where they want to go, or the guys just simply playing at a higher level than they did last year, it feels very much like a make or break deal.
In other words, making the play-in. What do we call that, Sam? Is make or break winning a playoff series? Is make or break making the playoffs as a top 6 seed, as they did a few years ago. Do you have a definition in your head of what would make this season from either a front office standpoint or even a Vivekkian standpoint?
Vivekkian.
Yes.
I mean, for me, honestly, it's got to be at least winning a playoff series.
Yeah.
Because it's a compliment, I think, for even me to have that view on the caliber of players they have. I think, listen, Sabonis, we don't have to go too macro. We've talked about this topic, but Sabonis is signed his extension. He's got multiple years left. We know the De'Aaron Fox situation. The more I've thought about that particular component, it just is what it is. Like, De'Aaron envisions himself as one of the best players on the planet. And those guys at this age, if they are routinely either missing the playoffs or barely squeaking in and then getting their hat handed to them in the first round, that's not what he's here for. That's not, and obviously that's a funny thing to say, because then the fans would say, well, then do it, then lead the way, do it,
Right.
but it's not a boxing match. It's a team game. So I think winning a first round matchup for the whole group, I mean, their organization has functioned at a fairly high level for several years now, quite a while now, in terms of, all the stuff that didn't happen in the old days, being a semi-normal NBA team that didn't constantly have cultural concerns and dramas left and right. So now it's like, you got to take all this hard work and have it pay off in the form of a playoff run.
I make no mistake on my show, Sam, the amount of love and respect I have for both Monty McNair and Coach Brown, though I'll criticize them. The bottom line is this team missed the playoffs 16 consecutive years. And in Monty's case, in his front office, they've brought in Mike Brown, who's been second only to Rick Adelman in win percentage and success. The Sabonis trade, the Halliburton draft, we can go on and on and on. We talked about the Halliburton situation and how it was an imbalanced team. I think that's forgivable. He obviously balanced it out with acquiring Sabonis. But now I look at coming into this year, and we talk about that lack of front court depth. We talk about the fact that the four, if you will, is probably not ideal with Keegan Murray there. It's probably more ideal to have a traditional four and DeMar at the 2, Keegan at the 3, Sabonis at the 5. On top of that, the bench is thin. Sam, one thing that we haven't talked about enough is the drafting of Devin Carter. And I'm going to present to you a theorem, and you tell me if it's unfair. A, they had no idea Devin Carter was going to be injured or already had an injury and would miss most of the season, and they still drafted him. So you should probably question that. Or B, they did know that Devin Carter would be injured and out for much of the season, knowing the makeup of their team. And you should question that. 3, they drafted another guard to go with a guard-heavy backcourt and a forward/center light front court. Should they be a little bit more under the microscope for the way they're distributing the talent on the squad again?
Yeah, I mean, some version of that is definitely fair. I talked to Anthony Slater about this last night at the game a little bit. The truth is, to be fair, and I'm actually going to, ask questions and try to get clarity on this eventually. I don't have clarity on what they knew at the time.
Yeah.
My recollection is that they drafted him, and then I forget the exact timeline, but it was in pretty quick order that night, I believe, where they had shared like, oh yeah, he's got this, situation. But it was not portrayed in any sort of serious way. And next thing you know, it's obviously a long absence and his entire rookie season being kind of in peril. Even independent of that, and you can always play the Monday morning quarterback draft game. We're watching the Lakers game on the TV last night on Press Row, and this is a team, I mean, again, the 3-point shooting was an issue until last night. Here comes Dalton Connect, going crazy in the game against Memphis last night for the Lakers. Just you start seeing different players who, regardless of which guy you like better, Dalton Connect is out there helping the Lakers win games right now. And he went after Devin. So that one combined with, the Davion Mitchell, like having Davion kind of reunion game with Toronto reminds you that's a pretty premier pick that didn't work out. So yeah, I mean, that stuff is fair to look at. they've hit at some points and, done some things that really paid off. But the tough part, especially with this CBA and the way, that the luxury tax system is these days, that competitiveness around the edges is more important than ever. And that part of that is the draft, not to get too far afield, but like the Denver Nuggets come to mind. The Denver Nuggets' entire title contending fate, or at least a large part of it this year, is rooted in draft picks that they are relying on paying off from the past couple of years, because that's the way they felt like they had to build their team, to economically make it work. So for the Kings to have misses on the draft like they have is pretty tough.
Sam Amick joining us. Just moving off the Kings real quick. I'm not a Doc Rivers guy. I don't know what Milwaukee's been thinking the last couple of years. I'm going back to and again, you mentioned Monday morning quarterback. We talked about this with Adrian Griffin. We talked about this with the Dame Lillard trade and letting go of Drew Holiday. These are not Monday morning quarterbackings. And then last night you see, I think, what was it? Giannis had 22 of the 24 points in the first quarter, and it took a 90% free throw shooter to miss 2 and feel the pressure for the Bucks to get that win against Detroit. What the hell is going on in Milwaukee, dude?
I don't even know where to begin. I wrote something just this week about it. They're stuck, man. They're stuck. And it's funny because, even in the media, we got to take our L's. And I wasn't alone, but man, I was all about the Damian Lillard trade, and partly what I think I see more clearly in hindsight is that, it is challenging when an incredible player like Giannis is shown a commitment to a small market like Milwaukee. But now what I'm seeing that has happened is, they have multiple times felt pressure and felt compelled, the Bucks organization, to go do something flashy to impress Giannis basically and convince him to sign the next extension. And it's happened twice and it's only worked once. Now that's not a bad batting average when you're talking about championships, but they traded for Drew Holiday. That, convinced Giannis that it was time to stick around. Right. They won a title. Obviously now the choice to get off Drew Holiday to go get Damian Lillard is not looking like it was the wise move, and then you add in the fact that Dame is, I believe, 34. I don't know. They have put all their chips on the table. They have virtually no draft capital with which to work. And they have become, even in this early season, as I make the rounds and talk to different teams, all these other teams that are trying to justify their controversial choices, like the Clippers letting Paul George walk away, the Warriors and some stuff they've done, all of a sudden everybody's fail-safe excuse is, well, look at the Bucks. We don't want to be the Bucks.
Right.
That's what we're trying to avoid. And, then you've got, management and coach situation where, John Horst, the GM of the Bucks, it is what I like John a lot. I praised him when he traded for Dame, but he hired Adrian Griffin, who obviously didn't last long. Doc comes in, he did the Dame trade. Those are the moves that are kind of the driving forces behind their struggles right now. But Chris Middleton being out, which is just an annual affair.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then, we certainly checked on it in Milwaukee and people around the Bucks. There's really no substantive concrete sign that Giannis is going to raise his hand anytime soon and say, get me out of here. Just to be clear, there's nobody saying that. It's just the idea that, how long is he going to be willing to be in an environment like this? And only he knows that. But yeah, it's pretty ugly out there.
And by the way, he's brought a championship to Milwaukee. This isn't a situation with Dame where you feel like he held on maybe 2 or 3 extra years in Portland because he wanted so badly to win a title there and not have the appearance of disloyalty. I'm not saying Giannis could leave Milwaukee lickety-split, no problem, but he does have that, much like when LeBron left Cleveland the second time. Hey, you got the hardware. I need to go do something else. I'm not here for a rebuild.
Yeah, and I mean, more specifically, this, again, just me talking.
Yeah.
I personally think, to your point, that emotionally, mentally, psychologically for Giannis, when I was with them in training camp, he was actually the one who pointed out to me how few people within the Bucks organization anymore are actually the ones who were with him there at the beginning. In fact, I pointed out our Bucks beat writer, Eric Name, who's been there a long time. And I made a mistake. And I was like, well, Eric, and he's not part of the organization, but I was like, hasn't Eric been here? And he knew all this in his head. He's like, no. He's like, these 7 years, I was this many years. He goes, no, Eric didn't come until this year. And he had it all in his head. Like, who was with me in the beginning? And then what does it look like now? And I bring that up because what struck me is that John Horst, the GM, has been there since the beginning. John Horst literally, this is kind of an affectionate, kind of cool, charming story. John literally showed Giannis how to drive a car.
Wow.
When he first came over to the States. And at that time, John wasn't the GM yet. So, you look at their situation, and we wrote about this. Like, there's rumors and chatter that, that John, he tried to go to the Pistons in the summer and the Bucks blocked him. So are they going to give John an extension? Which is the optics of that are pretty tough right now. Doc, there are rumors about him possibly eventually making his way to the Bucks front office. They've got Darvin Ham sitting on the bench, who would be kind of a natural fill-in if something like that happened. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but with the Giannis stuff, I just wonder if it keeps going poorly and if he kind of reads the room. And, I think to me, loyalty is partly tied to who are you actually working with on a day-to-day basis. And for the most part right now, there's a lot more faces around him that have not been part of his story than ones who have been.
And please tell me if Doc eventually makes his way to the front office, it'll be no disrespect to Alvin Gentry, but it'll be more of an Alvin Gentry role than a Monty McNair role.
No, sir.
Oh God. What is it about Doc Rivers that enamors? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but my goodness, what is it? What more proof do you need? Not that it's all Doc's fault, but underachieved, my opinion, with the Clippers. You had, I'm being really unfair now, but you had 3 Hall of Famers on the Celtics. It worked out itself. And now you go here and you go from a rookie coach who literally had them at the best record in the Eastern Conference, and Doc comes in and coaches the All-Star team, and they've been like 20 and 1,000 since then. What does he have pictures of people? What is going on?
This one's tricky because I hear you on all that. I do. But, when I was around them again in the preseason and training camp, I don't know. Like I felt like Doc was in a good place, that he was genuinely trying to problem solve here and attack this thing. I get what you're hinting at. Yes, he, like the, Bucks ownership group likes him.
Right.
And this one, I am very, very resistant to, there is people saying, oh, here comes Doc again. He's going to find his way into the next, falling up situation. Well, this one is like, again, the front office made the decisions that have mostly led to these outcomes.
Yeah.
And the ownership group likes him. So I don't know where it's going to go. That is something that for now is being discussed around the league. And we're still trying to get clarity on the Bucks side of things, how real it is, but I do think it's worth monitoring.
That's Sam Amick of The Athletic. You can check him out both online and at The Athletic, where you can get a subscription, maybe 2 subscriptions like I do, and share them with the entire family. Speaking of, say hello to the fam. Sam, thanks as always. We'll talk to you soon, brother.
Thanks, brother. Talk soon.
All right, take care. That is Sam Amick, and we are late for a break. When we come back, what are we going to do here? Give me a chance to catch up a little bit since we just kind of rolled into that interview. 4 down territory. We'll have Niners at 9. Weirdly enough, by the way, guys, we're going to do Niners at 9. We're going to do it at 9 a.m. Yeah, how